Hello, CUBE community, and welcome to theCUBE's coverage of reInvent 2025. I'm Jackie McGuire, the practice lead and principal analyst for security, and I am very lucky to be joined today by Ken Exner. He's the chief product officer of Elastic. Ken, welcome.
Hey, Jackie, good to be here.
Hey. So we have not gotten a chance to do an interview together, but I am really excited because I work with Elastic quite a bit, and you guys have a whole bunch of really cool stuff going on right now that we're going to get to in a bit. But what I thought would be fun to start with, as I usually do, is I would love to know more about you, Ken, and how you got to Elastic, kind of
Uh-oh.
what your background is, and and as we were talking about before, your meandering path to where you are now.
All right. So I've been at Elastic for 3.5 years. So I'm not new to Elastic. I've been here 3.5 years. But before that, actually, this is very fitting because this is a reInvent coverage show.
I was
I was,
actually gonna make the pun of, "Can you tell me how you've
yeah.
reinvented yourself?" But you never know which way that
Ah.
could go.
But I was at AWS for 16 years. So I've actually been to every single reInvent. I was at AWS for 16 years, and if you do the math, it pretty much means I was there from the beginning of AWS. So I was one of the very first employees in AWS. I was actually the second product manager that was hired. So I was there for the entire ride from the beginning. So a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so now you're at Elastic, and you're the chief product officer, so you work on all kinds of things, but what is the most interesting thing that you're working on right now?
What's not interesting? So, as the chief product officer, I'm responsible for product and engineering across the different portfolio that we have, which includes security products, which includes observability products, and of course, search and AI products as well. I think it's hard not to talk about the influence of AI on our product portfolio. Not only, of course, like for people that build on top of Elasticsearch, they're often using us as a search engine for retrieval and helping build AI applications. But it's been fun seeing how we've been reinventing ourselves and reinventing the experience for observability and security as well, using AI to fundamentally change the experience for security and observability practitioners as well. So I'm excited about how much AI is changing how we work and changing how we build software and changing the experience that we deliver to our practitioners.
Yeah, and I imagine observability has become significantly more important in the age of AI and, especially agentic AI when you're talking about the ability for one instruction to cause 100, 200, several hundred agents to start doing things, the ability to kind of track those things. And I was going to say real time, but I'm not even sure real time is fast enough to describe how you need to achieve observability with agents. But is that something that's become more prevalent the last couple of years as these things have sped up?
Yeah, you're talking about how do we start thinking about agents as systems, as entities that we need to observe and protect? So yeah, like we've been introducing LLM observability so that you can observe the applications that you build, AI applications. So if you are building an agent, like how do you observe that? How do you protect that? So yeah, we've been making sure that we support all the different LLMs and have the ability to do cost and token tracking, the ability to look at query logs and metrics and look at the trace of the tracing for an AI application. So all the things that we've typically done for traditional observability, traditional security, we're extending that into the age of AI and agentic AI as well.
Yeah, and you talk about that in terms of context engineering. So can you talk a little bit more about what context engineering is and how it applies to this kind of use case we're talking about?
Sure. So I think context engineering is like it's one of those very popular terms these days, and I think it's because people are starting to build AI applications, agentic AI applications, and what they're realizing is that the most important part of building this agentic AI application is making sure that the LLMs have the right data. Have the right data to ground them on the right context to scope to scope the actions of that agent. Now, traditionally, there's been prompt engineering, and prompt engineering evolved into RAG, retrieval augmented generation. But today, there's a number of different techniques for how you can get the right data to an LLM, whether it's RAG, whether it's through building tools and helping the LLM with tool selection, or its memory systems. There's all these different techniques for how you can get the right data to the LLM so that it makes the right decision, so that it gives the right answers, so that it has the right context. And this entire field of getting the right data to an LLM is increasingly being called context engineering. And I personally think it's the most important thing in building AI applications that work, that succeed, that do the right things. You have to have the right data. So I think you're going to hear this term context engineering a lot over the next year because context engineering is what is vital to doing AI right.
Yeah, and I think, one of the things that has kind of occurred to me is that with context engineering, it's kind of like how different companies decide how to do their meetings, right? So you have some companies that have like a daily stand up where they meet every day or they do it in Slack. You have some companies that don't talk to each other for a couple months at a time. And so I think everybody's kind of trying, to your point, to do that with these agents and figure out how much they need to do. But I think a lot of people, if you're not really deep in this world, don't realize that we're still kind of talking about predictive text, right? I don't wanna say it's just like, the key at the
You're
top of your
predicting the next
keyboard of
token.
an
Yeah,
iPhone. Yeah,
yeah.
but if you don't give an agent the right context,
Mhm.
they generally fill in the blanks, right?
Yeah, an LLM is essentially a predictive system. It's predicting the next token, and it's doing this by a process of reasoning about what is the best answer for the next token. And in order to do that, it has to be scoped to the right data. So if you don't scope something, it's going to use its general foundational knowledge to provide an answer. But if you want to make sure that it's scoped to a particular corpus of data, or that it understands who you are personally, like in understanding the personalization, the person it's talking to, you need to make sure it has that context. And you do this through context engineering. You give it the memory to understand that this is the person I'm talking to, or you give it the grounding data in order to say, this is the data I want you to base the answer on. All that is context engineering. It is giving context to an LLM so that it can produce the right next token and a series of right next tokens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you think about, as the chief product officer, when you think about building products, Elastic has Elastic Agent Builder, which is this whole, suite of capabilities that, you know, really accelerate how fast you can build agents and things like that. So, how do you incorporate context engineering into Elastic Agent Builder to help people build those systems with the context that they need?
Yeah. So, well, first, Agent Builder is kind of, as its name suggests, it helps you build agents. But it is a very easy built-in capability within Elastic that allows you to take any data that Elastic has either indexed or has access to, like through connectors, and it allows you to automatically build agents on top of that. So, we actually provide you an out-of-the-box conversational agent by default for any index in Elastic, which means that you can start having a conversation with your data. You can actually start having a conversational experience with your data. But it's a sample app. It's a sample app that takes a bunch of different MCP tools that we've built. Takes a bunch of a bunch of pre-built prompts that you can customize, and it presents all these things to the user so that they can then build their own agents. So it is a very, very easy way to start having an agentic application on top of any data, any custom data, because we give you one out of the box by default and then allow you to customize it.
Yeah, so you don't have to try building your own and end up giving away a car for a dollar.
A perfect example of why you need context engineering, so that your agents don't make mistakes. You can give it the right context to understand what the right price is for a car.
Yeah, and you can also use that context for answer validation, right? So once you've produced an answer, you can make sure that it falls within the guidelines of that context.
Yeah, well, a critical part of doing context engineering is evaluation. It is the observability evaluation to make sure that you're producing the right result. So evals in context engineering are kind of like unit tests. They help you test the quality and efficacy of what you're doing. But you also have sort of the equivalent of like an integration test, which is like LLM as judge, which is trying to assess the entire answer and trying to make sure that you have the most relevant, the most accurate information. So this is a big part of what we do at Elastic. We're kind of like known for relevance. Like we've always been in the business of relevance, trying to, in a traditional search was always about, getting you the right 10 links. But in the age of AI, it's about making sure that you have the one best answer or the one most accurate task that an agent is performing. And we do that through relevance. And relevance is partly about retrieval, but it's also partly about evaluation and testing and making sure that you're making this a feedback loop.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask to pivot a little bit. You had mentioned model context protocol. So one of the things that keeps coming up over and over and over as I talk to people about AI and specifically agentic AI is this context of standards and how standards really. I think I heard at Okta. Pete McKinnon says standards make the internet work. And so, how do you think about that? And this is just such a burgeoning field, and it's, we have so little clarity in a lot of areas and everybody's running as fast as they can to keep up. Elastic is really in a pretty high profile dominant position, to your point, because you do have the ability to surface data in an incredibly accurate and relevant way. So how do you think about that in terms of standards and, maybe leading the way with standards, or what kind of guidance you're looking for with regard to data?
Yeah. Well, so Elastic is based started from Elasticsearch, which is one of the most popular open source projects of all time. We care a lot about open source. We care a lot about open standards. We're like one of the leading contributors to open telemetry. We care a lot about having open standards. I think in the world of AI, MCP has had a huge impact on the evolution of agents. I think there are two things that really led the way to this agentic boom that we had this year. One was the development of MCP,
Mhm.
which created a standard interface, a standard protocol for how you could express functions as an API. We call them tools. APIs and functions existed for a long time, but it wasn't until MCP sort of defined a common interface, a common protocol, that you really started to see this acceleration of tool building. That was a huge part of this. The other part was, LLMs got really good at reasoning. So the combination of really good reasoning plus an open standard for tool definition led to this huge boon of agents. I think it matters a lot, and I think as you look forward, I think there's two camps I'm starting to see emerge. There's some of the LLMs that are starting to build walled gardens and trying to make sure that everything stays within their walled garden. That is one approach. It's kind of like the Apple approach or the AOL approach, which is I have my walled garden. AOL for people who don't, I guess I'm old. AOL was
I was always on
the
net
first
zero
one.
because we were poor,
Net zero.
but
There we go. Apple is a good example. It's a walled garden. Everything exists within their ecosystem. That is one approach. I like the open standards approach. I think MCP is a good example of this. It led to the proliferation of agents and agent-based technologies because it created an open standard. I want to make sure, I want to bet on that. And I think in a world where you have open standards, I think we're well positioned as being sort of a standards and open source loving company that we work across all the CSPs, we work with all the LLMs. I think it's kind of in our ethos. I think we're well positioned to take advantage of a world where standards bloom.
yeah, and I would be remiss as the security analyst if I didn't. One of the other ways that Elastic is, I don't necessarily know if you've reinvented yourself, but one of the other areas where you really lead the charge is in security. So with MCP, one of the things we saw pretty rapidly was, oh, we actually need to secure these things. So how do you think about building secure products so that people can actually trust the data they're putting into these models, trust the agents, the responses they're getting, trust the MCP responses that they're getting from MCP servers. It seems to me, I like to interview Mike Nichols. He and I are real tight. And you guys really have kind of led the way on that in the last few years as well. So how do you think about that as you're building product?
Yeah, Mike is on my team. Um, uh,
Shout out, Mike.
Shout out to Mike. Mike is now the GM for our security solution. So congrats, Mike, on promotion to GM. But I think agents are kind of like a new asset in the list of assets that a CISO and an office of the CISO needs to think about. So we have a SIM, we have a security analytics platform. We need to start thinking about agents as assets that you need to protect, like anything else. So It's no longer just Kubernetes clusters and hosts and different systems. An agent is a system, is an entity that you need to protect. So we like to just view this as an extension of the security landscape that you already need to protect as an office of the CISO. You need to be thinking about all the different endpoints that you have in your business. You need to think about all the different hosts. You need to also be thinking about all the agents, all the AI-based applications as well. So to us, it's an extension of that portfolio.
Awesome. And then
Mhm.
let's say we're at reInvent next year in 2026. Final question. Um,
Yeah.
how do you feel like Elastic will have reinvented itself again? So, what things do you see coming for 2026 that you're excited about? How do you think Elastic's going to continue to kind of contribute with, agent builder and context engineering and all of these different things? What do you think will be the big news? I know you nothing public, of course, but what are you looking forward to in 2026?
I think 2026 will be the year of context engineering. I really, really mean that. This year was the year of agents. Everyone started moving towards agents. I think as people start building agents, they're going to realize how critical, how vital context engineering is. It's what distinguishes successful AI projects from ones that fail. It distinguishes like a well functioning agent from one that operates on random data. So context, having relevant information is going to matter. So I think if I look forward a year from now, we will have gone through the year of context engineering, and Elastic will emerge as the leader of relevance, as the leader in context engineering, and we'll be helping people build agents and agentic applications on top of various LLMs, various CSPs in an open way using open standards. So I'll be very happy to see more standards emerging, MCP maturing as a standard, starting to cover some of its gaps, like around auth and stuff, and so, maturing as a standard so that it can support real production agent use cases using context engineering from Elastic.
Thanks, Ken, for being here. We really appreciate it. This is reInvent 2025, and you're watching theCUBE, your leading source for tech news and analysis.